You know that moment when you walk into an elevator with someone you kind of know, but not enough to have a real conversation with, and suddenly your brain becomes a broken printer. They say, "Hey, how's it going?" And you say, "Good, good." You? They say, "Good." And then the elevator has the audacity to keep moving slowly. Now you're both staring at the numbers like they're the season finale of a thriller. Floor 3, floor 4, floor 5. Your brain is screaming, "Say something normal." But the only options it offers you are weather, traffic, or a weird comment about how elevators smell different in office buildings. And maybe, after that tiny social ritual, you walk away thinking, why do I hate that so much? Why does small talk feel like emotional bubble wrap? Technically useful, but deeply irritating? Most people assume that if you hate small talk, it means you're shy, rude, awkward, antisocial, or secretly planning to move to a cabin in the woods and communicate only with owls. But psychologically, the truth is a lot more interesting, because many people who hate small talk don't actually hate people. In fact, they often care about connection deeply. They just hate the costume that connection is forced to wear at the beginning. Small talk is like the loading screen of human interaction. Some people are happy to watch the little spinning wheel. Others are sitting there thinking, can we please just get to the actual game? And that's where the psychology gets fascinating, because small talk is not really about information. When someone says, "Crazy weather, huh?" they are not usually asking you for a meteorological analysis. They are not hoping you'll pull out a tiny chart and explain atmospheric pressure. What they're really saying is, are we safe with each other? Are we friendly? Can we share this space without things getting weird? Small talk is a social handshake, a soft knock on the door, a way of saying, I come in peace and I also notice the rain. But for some brains, that social handshake feels strangely exhausting, not because they don't understand it, but because they understand it too well. They can feel the performance underneath it. They can sense the script. And if you're the kind of person who values honesty, depth, or emotional precision, small talk can feel like being asked to dance to music you don't hear. You're standing there, smiling, nodding, saying, "Yeah, Monday again," while inside your mind is holding a tiny protest sign that says, "This is not a conversation. This is verbal wallpaper." And honestly, fair. People who dislike small talk often have a low tolerance for what psychologists might call surface-level interaction. They crave meaning, not because they're dramatic, but because their attention naturally searches for patterns, motives, stories, and emotional truth. They don't just want to know what you did over the weekend, they want to know what made you laugh when you didn't expect to, what you're afraid of becoming, what song you secretly play when you need to feel like the main character again. But you can't usually ask your coworker that by the coffee machine at 8:47 in the morning. Society has rules. Apparently, "How's your inner child doing today, Mark?" is frowned upon before breakfast. So small talk becomes a kind of waiting room. And for people who hate waiting rooms, every casual interaction feels like sitting under fluorescent lights with old magazines and a plant that gave up in 2016. One reason this happens has to do with cognitive effort. For some people, casual chit-chat is easy. It's automatic. Their brain tosses out little social phrases like confetti. "Busy day? Love your jacket." Can you believe this traffic? It's not fake to them. It's fluid. But for others, especially people who are more introverted, highly sensitive, socially anxious, neurodivergent, or just intensely reflective, even simple social exchanges require mental translation. They're not just hearing the words. They're calculating tone, facial expression, timing, how much eye contact is too much eye contact, whether their answer was too short, whether the silence afterward means they failed as a human being, and whether they should now pretend to check their phone or commit fully to staring at a wall. That is a lot of tabs open in the brain browser. And when too many tabs are open, small talk stops being small. It becomes a full-body project. This is why someone might seem perfectly confident giving a presentation about something they care about, but then completely freeze when a neighbor says, "Nice day, isn't it?" A meaningful topic gives the brain a map. Small talk is fog. You don't know how long it's supposed to last, where it's going, or whether you're allowed to exit without seeming like a haunted Victorian child. There's also a deeper emotional layer. Many people who hate small talk are not necessarily rejecting conversation. They're rejecting emotional distance. They feel, sometimes painfully, how often we use polite words to avoid real contact. How are you? Fine. How's work? Busy? We should catch up sometime. Definitely. And then both people walk away knowing the conversation was less of a bridge and more of a decorative fence. This can feel lonely, especially if you are someone who has spent your life wanting to be understood, not just acknowledged. Small talk can remind you of all the times people were near you but not with you. Family dinners where nobody said what they were really feeling. Friendships that stayed pleasant but never became intimate. Workplaces full of cheerful greetings and quiet emotional exhaustion. It's not that the phrase, "How are you?" is offensive. It's that sometimes, after years of being asked that question by people who didn't really want the answer, your nervous system starts to roll its eyes before you do. And yet, here's the twist. Small talk is often how deeper talk begins. I know. Annoying. It's like finding out the boring side quest is necessary to unlock the dragon level. But psychologically, small talk helps people test safety. Human beings are social animals and our brains are constantly scanning for cues. Is this person warm? Are they judgmental? Do they listen? Do they interrupt? Can I reveal one more inch of myself here? A lot of the time, a conversation doesn't jump from nice weather to I'm terrified I'm wasting my life in one move. It takes little steps. Weather becomes weekend plans. Weekend plans become stress. Stress becomes values. Values become vulnerability. And suddenly somehow what began as long line, turns into two people having a strangely beautiful conversation next to a vending machine. Researchers who study social connection have found that people often underestimate how much they'll enjoy brief interactions with strangers. In experiments, commuters who were asked to talk with someone nearby often reported a more positive experience than they expected. The funny part is that many people predicted it would be awkward or unpleasant. Their brains basically said, absolutely not, stranger danger, but with backpacks. Then reality surprised them. This doesn't mean everyone secretly loves small talk. It means our predictions about social interaction are often grumpier than the interaction itself. Your brain is trying to protect you from awkwardness, rejection, boredom, and the unspeakable horror of saying you too when the waiter says, enjoy your meal. But sometimes in protecting you, it also blocks you from tiny moments of connection. Still, there's a difference between disliking small talk and being bad at connection. That distinction matters. Some of the most emotionally intelligent people in the world despise small talk. They can sit with grief, ask brave questions, remember the tiny details of someone's story, and make others feel deeply seen. They just don't sparkle naturally in the land of so any fun plans, and maybe you recognize yourself in that. Maybe you're the person who would rather have one honest, strange, meaningful conversation than 10 perfectly pleasant ones. Maybe you've been called too intense. Maybe you learned to shrink your curiosity because people looked startled when you answered, "How are you?" with something more honest than "good." There is nothing wrong with wanting depth, but there is also something worth understanding. Not every shallow beginning is a shallow ending. Think of small talk like the porch of a house. It is not the living room. It is not where the secrets are kept. It is not where someone tells you about the heartbreak that changed them or the dream they're embarrassed to admit they still carry. But the porch matters. It's where people decide whether they feel welcome enough to come inside. People who hate small talk often want to kick the front door open and say, "Let's be real." And sometimes that works. Sometimes it's refreshing. But other times it overwhelms people whose nervous systems need a slower invitation. Depth is beautiful. Timing is part of kindness, so maybe the goal isn't to force yourself to become someone who loves small talk. Maybe the goal is to reinterpret it. Instead of seeing it as meaningless, you can see it as emotional calibration. Not the meal, but the smell of food cooking. Not the destination, but the little bridge that keeps people from falling into the river of awkwardness. You can also make small talk feel more like you. You don't have to become a weather correspondent with dead eyes. You can bring a little warmth, curiosity, or playfulness into it. When someone asks, "How was your weekend?" you don't have to give your full autobiography, but you can offer one real detail. "Pretty quiet, actually. I needed a reset." That tiny bit of honesty gives the other person something human to respond to. Or when someone says, "How's work?" instead of saying, "Busy," and letting the conversation collapse like a folding chair, you might say, "Busy, but in that weird way where I did 100 things and somehow don't know what any of them were." That's still casual, but it has life in it. It gives the other person permission to be real too, because sometimes the problem isn't small talk itself. It's small talk done without presence. A tiny conversation can still be generous. A short exchange can still say, "I see you." The barista who remembers your order. The neighbor who jokes about the broken elevator again. The coworker who notices you seem tired and says it gently. These are not deep conversations exactly, but they are little stitches in the fabric of belonging. And belonging is often made of smaller threads than we expect. Of course, there are also times when small talk feels unbearable because you're emotionally depleted. When your inner battery is at 2%, even a cheerful morning can feel like someone asking you to run a triathlon in jeans. That doesn't make you rude. It makes you human. Social energy is real. Attention is real. Masking is real. And if you've been performing all day, pretending one more time can feel like putting glitter on a bruise. So be gentle with yourself. Maybe you don't hate people. Maybe you hate pretending. Maybe you hate conversations that feel like they come from a vending machine. Maybe your mind is built for depth, nuance, and the quiet thrill of finally saying what you mean. That is not a flaw. That is a kind of hunger. And hunger tells us something important about what nourishes us. But maybe too, small talk doesn't have to be the enemy. Maybe it can be the doorway, the warm-up, the tiny spark before the campfire. Not every interaction will become meaningful, and that's okay. Not every seed becomes a forest. Some are just seeds. Some are just moments. The next time you're trapped in that elevator and someone says, "How's it going?" maybe you don't have to panic. Maybe you don't have to perform either. Maybe you can simply answer with one honest sentence. "Pretty good. Still waking up, honestly." And maybe they'll laugh. Maybe they'll say, "Same." And for 2 seconds, the elevator won't feel quite so cold. That's the strange thing about being human. We spend so much time trying to avoid awkwardness that we forget awkwardness is often where connection begins. Two people, both unsure, both improvising, both hoping they're doing it right. So if you hate small talk, don't shame yourself for it. Your desire for depth is meaningful, but don't underestimate the little conversations either. Sometimes they're just noise, sometimes they're camouflage, and sometimes, hidden inside a sentence about the weather, is a small, shy attempt to say, "I'm here. Are you here too?" And maybe that's worth answering. So tell me, do you hate small talk because it feels fake, draining, boring, or because you're secretly waiting for someone to ask the real question? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because honestly, this is exactly the kind of conversation that small talk wishes it could become.